We are live, sir.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Homeless and Poverty Committee of the Los Angeles City Council. We are here today, Thursday, January the 28th, and the committee is scheduled to meet on the second and fourth Thursdays of each month. We are ably supported by the Office of the City Clerk, the Office of the City Council, and the Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst, Ms. Campos, Ms. O'Neill, and Mr. Wickham, respectively. With that, Madam Clerk, would you please establish the quorum?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Ridley Thomas as chair.
Here.
Councilmember De Leon. Councilmember De Leon.
Here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rahman.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Buscaino.
Good morning. Here.
Good morning. We have 5 members present, sir, and a quorum. Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Clerk, and members of the committee. We begin with item number 1, which is to have welcome remarks from the chair as well as each member of the committee, should you be so inclined. I'll attempt to move through my remarks with a degree of brevity. I'll begin by indicating that it's important that we recognize the centrality of the work that we are about to embark on. It's a time of significant challenge, and we are here to do it. No secret to many of you and most that the causes of homelessness are multifactorial and complex. Necessary solutions, in my view, must be client-centered, culturally sensitive, as well as services focused. And I trust that the committee will take that up. And one of the goals, I hope, will be to replicate and expand the innovations and the models that have been tested, and see if there are new opportunities for collaboration with the Biden administration and the Newsom administration. But I want to be very clear that I believe that our work will be in vain if we don't drive toward establishing the legislative, budgetary, and I would say a compelling and coherent policy framework for the work of the committee. I've given a fair amount of thought to a lot of this, much of which can be found in a policy brief that we just completed, and I refer you to my website that kind of charts the work that has been done and some of the things that will be done. Let me just briefly make reference to a few points here, and then I'll be glad to turn to the Vice Chair. The first point is that we are fortunate to have a subject matter that lends itself to tremendous intersectionality. A range of disciplines come to bear when we talk about homelessness, and it should fill us with a lot of work, a lot of meaningful work, a lot of exciting work, a lot of forward-thinking work that we can do. You'll recall that it was in February of 2016 that both the city and the county jointly issued their comprehensive action plans to deal with homelessness. And pursuant to that, almost immediately 4 different dashboards were put forward in the interest of transparency and accountability. The city, the county, LASA, and the United Way, all distinct in their own right. And then following that, a few years later, the 40 5-point comprehensive crisis response strategy was issued at the state level by the task force convened by the governor. A lot of work there. What I think we have learned is that collaboration is key. That is, collaboration at the federal, state, county, and city levels all make a difference. Additional point that I want to call out is some of the fundamental contributing factors. Disparities, structural or systemic racism being significant among them. And I refer to the groundbreaking report written by a LASA ad hoc committee on black people experiencing homelessness, in 2018, 67 recommendations there, and a lot of important good work to be done. The root causes of homelessness we still have to work at and unearth, ranging from the affordable housing gap to the issue of downzoning, stagnation in wages, the dissolution of redevelopment, often overlooked but critically important in terms of the slowing down of affordable housing. These are things that strike me as being important to pay attention to. Might I say, members of the committee, that the focus, in my view, and the value of the health-focused and trauma-informed approach to dealing with the homeless crisis is critically important. Professor Peter Edelman wrote a text recently entitled, "It's Not a Crime to Be Poor." And in there, he makes that which I think is fundamentally important in terms of what we are dealing with in the context of homelessness. The next section of this document, this policy brief, talks about strengthening the safety net. And I believe that a lot of work can and should be done on that score. And I invite the committee to engage accordingly. And finally, one of the issues that will unavoidably have to be dealt with in terms of policy coherence is how we establish a right to housing. I will not jump the gun in terms of going into any depth in that regard. It's scheduled as a part of our next committee meeting to delve into that in more substance. But for now, let that suffice for my opening remarks, and trust that we can proceed accordingly. I now call on the Vice Chair of the committee, Mr. De Leon, for comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for your very powerful comments, comments that are much needed with regards to the humanitarian crisis that we are experiencing today. It's an honor for me to be on this committee with you, Mr. Chair, with wonderful colleagues such as Ms. Rodriguez, Mr. Buscaino, and Ms. Rahman, individuals who are all committed to the issue of homelessness. This is, as no doubt, the biggest humanitarian crisis of our lifetime. And the very fact that we have so many unhoused individuals living on our streets, our alleyways, our parks, our under and overpasses is, quite frankly, shameful. And it leaves an indelible mark of shocking shame, unlike anything we have ever experienced before. I like, Mr. Chair, that you mentioned and underscored the question of race, because I know that throughout the city of LA, we see so many people of color, but in particular, black and brown folks who are living on our streets under a brutal hot sun during the cold winter months, during the torrent rains, who are most impacted for the whole variety of issues that you articulated so accurately. We are the homeless capital of the nation. In fact, the county, as we all know, has over 60,000. We in the city of Los Angeles have over 41,000 unhoused individuals, the largest number in the nation. I, in District 14, have the largest number of unhoused individuals in the entire city. For that matter, I have more unhoused individuals than the unhoused community in the city of San Diego, a city of 1.4 million population. Oakland, Sacramento, San Jose, Fresno, Stockton, Santa Ana, Chicago, Houston, and Phoenix. And the list actually goes on and on. So this is an issue that is near and dear to my heart for also deeply personal reasons. We have a real opportunity to make a huge impact on the human condition collectively together as we work on policies, as we work on regulations, as we ask for accountability. How we collaborate in the spirit of cooperation, how we cooperate in the spirit of collaboration will be key, no question about it. And how we ask for accountability from ourselves, from the various governmental agencies, whether it be the local, whether it be the county, whether it be the state or federal governments, will be actually key in what we do to make sure we put a roof over the head of so many deserving Angelinos. And as you know, I've introduced what I call a North Star, a way home, 25,000 housing units by the year 2025. And I believe it's so important that we establish a goal for which we can measure either our successes or, in fact, our failures, and how we can collectively do better to provide dignity and respect to our unhoused community members who live in Skid Row, who live throughout City 14, who live throughout the city of Los Angeles. So how we do this collectively, Mr. Chair, I agree, will be we'll speak, about what our generation did to step up and do what we need to do and challenge the conventional, and to not push the envelope, but in fact tear the envelope apart. If the paradigm isn't working, what else can we do to be innovative, creative, and be forceful to make sure that we can put that roof over our folks' heads. So I thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to share a few words, and looking forward to working with you as well as all of my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Likewise, and thank you, Mr. De Leon. Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and let me echo Mr. De Leon's comments. Really want to recognize the work that our council president put forth in this compiling this committee before you, Mr. Chair, starting with you. I have, Mr. Ridley Thomas, I've had the distinct pleasure to work alongside you as my board supervisor representing the Watts community and the Harvard Gateway community, where you and I advanced on projects that said yes to solutions, said yes in my backyard with the Watts Bridge home site, as well as the El Segundo Apartments, which is an established and successful permanent supportive housing development. I'm excited about the skills, the knowledge, the abilities of this committee. Of course, the expansive experience at the city, state, and county level from our chair, as well as Mr. De Leon, the vast legislative experience in Sacramento, and Ms. Rahman, an urban planner, a nonprofit founder, who made it the key, essential part of her campaign to solve this humanitarian crisis, and our colleague, Ms. Rodriguez, a former Public Works Commissioner, and has a vast experience and knowledge in the real estate space. I want to mention, as our previous two speakers have done, I'm really proud of what we've accomplished as a city and how much more we need to do. In my district specifically, members, we have advanced on all the above approach, supporting supportive housing units, public housing, Project Room Key, Project Home Key, not one but three bridge home sites, Watts, Wilmington, and in San Pedro, a tiny home village that will soon open, safe parking locations, portable restrooms, showers, trash receptacles, and regular sanitation, street and sidewalk cleaning to protect the health and safety of all of our residents, including the most vulnerable, those who are on the streets. And I see moving forward, members, of some of the objectives for work on this committee is to continue to work with the state legislature to reform our mental health system, be able to reduce the time and costs of providing emergency housing, calling on the private sector who actually know how to get it done. Oftentimes I feel that bureaucracy can get in the way, and so many layers of government can get in the way on moving on housing solutions. Being able to improve data sharing and transparency among multiple levels of government to break down the silos. And develop a regional coordinated response to homelessness, working with our neighboring cities. When we talk about the regional strategy, Mr. Chair, as you mentioned, what we've done collectively with our partners in the County of Los Angeles, let's be mindful that the City of Los Angeles is one of 88 cities in the county, but I feel that the City of LA is doing more than any other city in this county. And when we talk about regional solutions to this humanitarian crisis, as Mr. De Leon alluded to, we're talking about regional solutions, saying yes to solve this crisis, and regional doesn't mean one city like the City of Los Angeles. Can you imagine if the other 87 cities doing what we're doing as a City of Los Angeles? And I would call on cities up and down the state of California, if we're really going to solve the homeless crisis, move forward on one supportive housing unit for every 500 resident in your city. Let's demand that, and let's call it what it is as well. We talk about the NIMBYism that we're seeing even amongst our own colleagues in local government, that not in my backyard. We don't want those people in my city. Let's push them to the City of Los Angeles, and that alone is a crime in itself. So with that, look forward to doing the work in this committee in advancing solutions and doing so with urgency. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buscaino. Ms. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mr. Ridley-Thomas. And truly, I'm excited about you taking the helm of this issue, given your vast experience both at the state legislative area, the county, which is pivotal in this conversation, and of course your history working with the City of Los Angeles as well. Same as with Mr. De Leon and your service in the state legislature. Just briefly, I will say that one of the committees. This has been the committee that I've been assigned to from my election in 2017, serving as vice chair of this committee previously. And I will say that there's probably no more important role that I've had than in service to the City of Los Angeles and participating in this effort, particularly at a time when in my district I was elected to represent an area that has seen such substantial transition in local leadership here that has not been consistent, lending itself to not having a cohesive vision about how to address this problem locally. That said, I'm also very proud of the work that we've delivered here in very short order, from bridge housing, the first safe parking facility that accommodates recreational vehicles, and the first hub with LA Unified to directly connect families, many of whom I've got the largest population of homeless youth in my district assigned to one elementary school at Telfair Elementary School, and helping to foster new pathways for us to navigate with other levels of bureaucracy, frankly, to help families get connected more quickly. That said, we need to address this issue, not just with the urgency, and that's been, from day one of my arrival, the work that we've led here. It's the greater humanity, but the accountability, they go hand in hand. And I will say that the other levels of government, and we've experienced our share of frustration with the lack of resources. Residents in the City of Los Angeles, just as they have in the county, have assessed themselves to help address this issue. And we have the obligation of making sure that we deliver on all of the commitments that have been made with respect to the resources that have been allocated to this effort. That said, we have not always seen the level of resources coming down until very recently, from the state level, and we need to certainly make sure that we are distributing and getting access to these resources to the same degree that the moment dictates. And so I will say that some of the silver linings that have revealed themselves as a result of the pandemic have availed those immediate resources, but they are really late. And so now we got to make sure that they just continue so that we can get a handle on this situation and finally start to deliver on the progress at the speed with which this moment dictates. And so, again, I'm thrilled to have you leading this here, given that wide array of experience that you bring to this conversation, because I know it's going to require each of us to hold every level of government accountable. And I'm delighted by the change of the administration at the federal level, because I'm optimistic that it will continue to avail additional resources that are necessary to have that FEMA-like response, that emergency response that this moment calls for. So I look forward to working with you in this effort, and look forward to making a tremendous amount of progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now turn to Ms. Rahman.
I will keep it brief, since I think everyone has said a lot of positive words already about the committee, and I just want to echo those. I'm excited to be in this group with people who've been working on this issue for a really, really long time, and especially Councilmember Ridley Thomas. I feel like you just bring that expertise from the county, and that partnership between our entity and the county is going to be so integral to getting things done here. So I'm really, really excited to lean on that and to learn from that, and very excited to be having that expertise in the discussions in this committee. And I just wanted to say that, I think I'm the only person on this committee who is really new to public office entirely. And as an outsider, before I joined here, I think a lot of the questions I had was about the gap between what we talked about as a city, the language that was used, the goals that we set, and the reality of what was happening on the streets and what we saw on the ground. And I'm really, really looking forward to understanding the barriers that have created those gaps, and to really taking them on head on through the work of this committee. So very excited to be here and to be here with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rahman. And I would say that we all have quite a bit to learn as we pursue this work. And with that, members, we thank you for your remarks. We now turn to public comment. I call on the city attorney to set the parameters. Madam?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the members of the public calling in, when it is your turn to speak, please state your name and which of the agenda items you would like to speak on. You have 1 minute to speak on one agenda item, or 2 minutes to speak on two agenda items. In addition, those who would like to address the committee with general public comment will be provided with 1 additional minute, for a maximum of up to 3 minutes per person for all agenda items, including general public comment. We will inform you when your time is up. When speaking on the agenda items, you must be on topic. Our goal is to get through as many speakers as we can. If you are not speaking on topic, or if we cannot tell whether you are speaking on an agenda item, you will get 1 brief warning from the city attorney or the chair. If you do not immediately get clearly back on topic, or if you again stray off topic, you will forfeit the rest of your time, and we will move on to the next speaker. We will take up to 40 minutes total of public comment today. Please press *9 to request to speak. As soon as you hear someone address you on the phone, please press *6 and state your name and state which agenda items you would like to speak on. Thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. We now turn to the clerk to allow the public access. And Madam Clerk, would you proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The instructions are as follows. Members of the public who would like to offer public comment on the items listed on the agenda should call 1-669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 160-431-9380, and then press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press star 9 to request to speak. Please note, if you are listening to the meeting on a computer or speakerphone, you will need to turn down the volume on those devices before you speak. If you do not turn down the volume, there will be an echo. Again, once admitted into the meeting, press star 9 to request to speak. That concludes the comments, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. It's come to my attention that we have 28 persons wishing to be heard. And with that, we should proceed. May I have the first speaker, please?
Caller with the last four numbers, 0201. Press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items on which you wish to speak.
Thank you. This is Brian calling from Echo Park. I would like to comment on general public comment and agenda item number 4. I would begin by saying I strongly urge CD13 to provide compassionate housing for all people living at Echo Park Lake. I strongly support the proposed tiny homes village at 1455 North Alvarado in Echo Park. However, only if the City Council prioritizes these homes for the current residents of Echo Park Lake. I urge the city to fast-track this project and cut through the regulatory red tape to get people housed as quickly as possible. Other cities have rapidly implemented tiny home communities at a fraction of the cost that Los Angeles is spending on similar projects. This could be a quick transition due to the proximity to Echo Park Lake, and people and their belongings could move quickly and efficiently with minimal disruption to these people's lives. Living at the lake puts people at high risk for COVID and other communicable diseases, and in light of the fact that 4 deaths have occurred in less than 6 months due to drug overdoses and a drowning, and due to the numerous shootings, assaults, sexual violence against women,
All right,
explosive
sir.
rat
You can transition to your general comments. Your 1 minute has expired. 1 minute remaining.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. In general, the living conditions in tent colonies provide no justification for sheltering in place at Echo Park Lake. Our number one goal should be to provide those individuals with decent housing, and secondly, to enable the restoration of Echo Park Lake for use of everyone in this multi-ethnic community, one of the only green spaces remaining for residents' access in this area. Immediate housing is a win-win for both the unhoused and the community at large. Meanwhile, I support the Care Plus outreach services and sanitation efforts by CD13, and we want our access to right-of-way restored, and I support clean parks and sidewalks throughout our community and the city.
You. Thank you for your call,
Thank
sir.
you.
Indeed. Next speaker, please.
Caller with the last four numbers ending in 6276. Please press star 6 to unmute. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Proceed, please.
Great. I would like to speak on item 4, I believe the tiny home project and general public comment.
All righty.
1 minute to address the item and 1 minute for general public comment. You may begin.
I wanted to say that I strongly support the tiny home project in Echo Park. I actually live right behind this empty lot that would be used for the project, and I know as one of the neighbors who would be closest to this lot, I absolutely support it, and we would be ecstatic to have a safe place for our unhoused individuals to be. I also wanted to echo the other caller in saying that I urge the city to prioritize the unhoused residents at the lake. The crisis that we're experiencing here in Echo Park in terms of the lake has gotten really, really bad. The crime is up, And, frankly, as residents, we're terrified. In the past, I'll move into general comment. In the past month, there's been a huge uptick in unhoused individuals breaking into homes, people waking up and finding individuals have set up camp on their porches so they can't exit or enter their homes. And I think this is something that the city needs to address right away. I also want to state that I support the Care Plus services, and I encourage the city to keep these going. These create a much safer, clean environment for the housed and the unhoused individuals. And I also support a lake being restored and used for its intended purpose so that all residents of Echo Park can utilize this green space. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We'll take the next speaker, please.
Caller with the last four numbers ending in 7543, please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Hi, good morning. My name is Leo. I'm calling to make a general comment, public comment.
You have 1 minute for public comment.
Thank you. Yes, I'm calling because I've noticed lately that the city of Los Angeles has been receiving a lot of attention for the homelessness crisis and the unhoused population. But as a San Fernando Valley resident, we're also experiencing homelessness and people with mental illness walking on the street, suffering, and we should also get attention as much as LA, because we also pay property and we should provide housing for unhoused residents in the valley too, because they're living in here and there's rain, when it gets hot, and we need to provide housing somewhere in the valley or different districts across the valley as well, not just in LA or downtown LA. That'll conclude my public comments. Thank you.
We thank you for your testimony. We'll take the next speaker.
Caller with the last four numbers ending in 0110, please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Hi, this is James. I want to speak on item 4 and general comment.
You have 1 minute to speak on the item and 1 minute for general public comment. You may begin.
Yeah, it's great that there's an agreement for a tiny home village, but I would love to know why we haven't considered commandeering hotels. Right now, the city council could be using their influence to urge Mayor Garcetti to commandeer these hotels and house everyone immediately. Right now we're dealing with a public health emergency, and displacing people, concentrating them in a small area would absolutely increase the spread of the virus. It also would be something that would be forcing residents into something that they are not interested in. And we would also like our council members to take this opportunity to actually speak to and listen to these residents, rather than cowardly community members who are afraid of people living in tents. I think the word was terrified, used by the previous commenter.
Thank you very much. You have 1 minute remaining for general comments, sir.
Great.
Right.
Sure. So generally, right now, we have people assuming that the crime that's happening in their neighborhood, they're just, profiling our, impoverished neighbors that aren't lucky enough to have a home, while they're more concerned about their real estate values. And it's pathetic, and it's being covered up with the words like compassion, and it's sad. And I really hope that our council members take this opportunity to actually listen to the people that need the help the most.
We thank you for your testimony. We'll take the next speaker, please.
Caller with the last four numbers ending in 1721, please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Hi, section items 4 and general public comment.
You have 1 minute to address the items and 1 minute for general public comment. You may begin.
Great. Hi, yeah. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Echo Park Neighborhood Council's Homelessness and Housing Committee, so I want to support item 4. We desperately need housing options here in Echo Park, but I truly, truly hope that whatever the final implementation is, that it is divorced from criminalization and enforcement zones. I also want to just note that I am strongly opposed to the way care post cleanups are occurring currently, but I'm excited about a motion from Councilmembers Bonnet and Rahman around updating care post cleanups. Okay. Now, I know you all understand the urgency of this moment, and with Project Roomkey being one of the most important ways we can ensure the safety of our unhoused residents right now, acting swiftly means saving lives. There are a couple of motions pending this committee that seem like necessary foundational work towards this pursuit, and I hope that Councilmember Ridley Thomas will choose to either agendize them for the next meeting or possibly even better, waive consideration so that they can come for a vote even sooner. The council files are 21-0040 and 21-0113. The first is from Council Members De Leon and Rodriguez. It's a motion to create a framework for prioritizing hotels and motels to lease with an emphasis on acquisition later, and it also instructs GSC to contact every hotel and motel in the city, which we totally have to do. The next is from Council Members Rahman and Bonin, and this would start the process of identifying how we can expand and improve Project Roomkey, and crucially includes the voices of those who've actually experienced homelessness, and also would identify what legal steps we would need to take if we needed to commandeer hotels if necessary. Thank you.
We thank you for your testimony, and your input is duly noted, and it is done in record time. Thank you very kindly. Next speaker, please.
Caller with the last 4 numbers ending in 4929, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Hello, my name is Raquel Wallace, and I would like to just give general public comment.
All right, please
you have 1 minute.
Thank you. So for the Care Plus suites, the idea behind them is to like make sure everyone has a clean place to be, but their execution with LAPD and officers, that's not what's happening. They're just taking unhoused people's belongings and throwing them away in the name of sanitation and in the name of sidewalk aesthetic. But until proper housing, like the one in Echo Park where they're going to do the tiny home village, that's awesome. I full-heartedly support that. Until that's made, we can't just allow their belongings to get stolen and thrown away and leave them with a blank slate, like anytime the city feels fit. We all want clean sidewalks and streets, but until we have the necessary housing, we can't just put that burden entirely on the unhoused community. So, as other callers have said, we should commandeer the hotels until that permanent housing is built, because they're vacant. And
right.
People shouldn't be traveling anyway.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next speaker, please.
Caller with the last 4 numbers ending in 8103, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Hi, this is Patsy. I live in Echo Park. I just have a general comment.
You have 1 minute. You may begin.
Yeah, hi. I'm calling from the neighborhood. I live here, and I just want you to know that this past week, I guess I'm begging you to act with some urgency. I've watched my neighbors' houses be broken into. My house is being visited daily, and I'm scared, and I would like some action to be taken. And I'm disheartened to hear the caller that was talking or attacking the people that live in this community and their housing values. I mean, our security is at risk. I just want you to know that we're scared, and I'm pleading for your urgent action. Thank you.
We thank you for your testimony, and we'll take the next caller.
Caller with the last 4 numbers ending in 9299, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Hi, we can.
Great. My name is Joanna. I'm an organizer with Street Watch. I'd like to speak on item 4 and then a minute of general public comment, please.
You have 1 minute for the item and 1 minute for general public comment. You may begin.
Awesome, thanks. I just want to throw some shame on all the dog whistling that's going down. People have the audacity to invoke the fact that 4 unhoused people are dying every day on our streets and then turn around and say it's about their security. I just want to quote someone, one of our fallen comrades from LA Can, Eddie H., who died this past year, who said, "Let's look past the surface language and question each other's hearts. And I want to question the people's hearts who are, instead of wondering, why is my neighbor in need that they're stealing? Why are they needing shelter so desperately that they're on my porch? Why is this person going through mental health crisis and getting police attention instead of medical attention? These are the questions we're asking in Services Not Sweeps Coalition. These are the questions we're bringing to you week after week. And all we get is Monica saying, finally, we're going to start to deliver. A year later, we need to fact check stuff like that and call out the dog whistling that happens from NIMBYs like Brian, who dog whistle for criminalization while silencing unhoused people on their own meetings when they show up to try to voice their opinions.
Okay, now the general comment, please.
Awesome, thank you. Supervisor Mark Ridley-Thomas, you supported a failed attempt to overturn one of the few civil rights cases that protected unhoused people's civil rights. So I just want to know, if you really care for those black and brown lives on the street, if you are really listening to them, why would you have supported that? We know that you're talking about sweeps. We know the people who support Care Plus sweeps right now, these commenters, have never spoken to the unhoused communities who are most at risk during a pandemic. People who have been forced to move their belongings during a sweep while they're suffering from COVID. In your district, Kevin DeLeon, while you tweet to white nationalists who are pissed at you because you can't recite the pledge correctly, you ignore us as we call you week after week from sweep locations in your district, while elderly people who've contracted this deadly disease are sitting in their tents at risk of being criminalized and losing their shelter days before a rainstorm. So I just want to know, where are your hearts at? You should question
Thank you for your
that.
testimony. We'll take the next speaker, please. Thank you.
Caller with the last four numbers ending in 7277, please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on. Caller with the last four numbers ending in 7277, please press star 6 to unmute yourself.
Hi there, this is Jed Perriott with the Services Not Sweeps Coalition. I'd like to speak on items 4 and general public comment.
And you have 1 minute for the item and 1 minute for general public comment. You may begin.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to reiterate the urgency that we need from y'all that we have not been getting, particularly around 4 dying a day and tens of thousands of vacant motels and hotels that have been sitting there since the beginning of this pandemic. We have been demanding you. We've been taking action. And this is a real moment. You guys have to do something, not just a motion to do a study and a report back months from now. Take these motels and hotels now. And I want to urge you again, we hear these people calling in, criminalizing people that they don't know. They're assuming people that broke into their house are homeless. It's disgusting. And so you need to listen to people who are living in the streets. You cannot do what Mitch O'Farrell has done in Echo Park, which is ignore the multiple attempts by the organized unhoused community to hold meetings about housing solutions with him. He ignores them, and he holds secret meetings with the Friends of Echo Park Lake, which are white real estate interests, literally real estate directors and homeowners who are making secret plans to enforce so that the protesters don't find out. And use this tiny homes project as an anchor point, as a tool for enforcement. And as you heard, they're prioritizing. So yes, as you hear, they're prioritizing a specific location. Prioritize Echo Park Lake because they want their park. What about the elderly folks dying literally a block away from that tiny home proposal that has been mentioned? There are literally encampments all over Echo Park, not just the lake. So we need to prioritize those who need that housing the most. That's who should be prioritized. Those who need it the most. Human need, not human greed. Please listen to your unhoused constituents. If you need help, the Services Not Sweeps Coalition can help connect you to folks who are living on the ground and dying on the ground every day. Do not listen to the white homeowners who are advocating for police violence and displacement. Thank you.
We thank you. We'll take the next speaker, please.
Caller with the last four numbers, 5519, please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on. Caller with the number ending in 5519, please press star 6 to unmute yourself.
Next speaker, please. Members of the committee, we are at the halfway mark.
Hello?
Spent about 20 minutes.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Hello, sorry. I don't know why it took a minute to unmute. I'm caller with the last digits, 5519. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. Please proceed.
Oh, okay, cool.
Items you wish to speak on?
My name's Lydia. I wish to speak on items 4 in general.
All right.
The item and the minute for general.
Lydia, the floor is yours.
All right. I support the tiny homes project. I support the Care Plus. It's ridiculous to me that it's even a notion that we shouldn't be sanitizing and keeping biohazards out of our neighborhood. I support the revitalization and restoration of Echo Park Lake. And the Street Watch group, they come in from other neighborhoods and tell us how we are supposed to live in our neighborhood. They don't even live around here. It's an LA-wide group. So they just bully us and they try to harass. But the majority constituents don't want to come out and say because they don't want to get called anti-homeless or whatever. But we really want the homeless housed, and the other groups just want to let them be wherever and die on the street. So that is my comment. And yeah, I support the housing project. Thank you.
We thank you for your testimony. Next speaker, please.
Caller with the last 4 numbers, 9917. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Hello, CL, general public comment, please.
You have 1 minute. You may begin.
Yes, sir.
I would like the council to consider a more holistic, humane approach beside different approaches to warehousing our unhoused community. I'd like to read a tweet that a homeless person in another state who is also trying to deal with getting housing and just their whole mind state at this point. I'm so afraid that if we get a home, my mental state won't get better. My separation anxiety and social anxiety has gotten so bad these past few years, and I've never dissociated before being homeless. I can walk to the bathroom, but forgot how I got there. It's not enough to simply warehouse people, get them off the street so that NIMBYs don't have to see stuff on their drive home. I don't think these people even walk up to these encampments, so I don't know why they're so concerned about any dirtiness in their vicinity, because these people are only seeing it from their car windows. They're not doing any outreach. But I would like you guys to really focus on these people as people and not just warehousing them, but treating them as people who deserve a good life.
All right. Thank you very much for your testimony. Next speaker, please.
Caller with the last 4 numbers ending in 3318. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Hi, yeah, I'd like to speak on items 4 in general public comment, please.
You have 1 minute for the item and 1 minute for general public comment. You may begin.
Yeah, my name is Richie Serjanko from People's City Council. I just want to note that on item 4, all of these callers that are calling in that are saying that they support the Care Plus sweeps in Echo Park, you know, they are anti-homeless and they're using a lot of dog whistles, and they are, you know, they want to criminalize homelessness, and they want to be able to call the police on unhoused people in their neighborhood, and we know for a fact that the police do not keep us safe. And so these people are literally putting others' lives in danger, and they're saying that they support Care Plus sweeps because of it keeps the environment or the toxins or whatever. You know, Care Plus sweeps displace people. They force unhoused residents to move all of their belongings and relocate, which is actually in direct violation of the CDC guidelines against displacement of unhoused residents during the pandemic. There have been recent cases of COVID outbreaks among LA City employees who sleep in encampments. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Joe Buscajeno says he's proud of what they've accomplished. You know, Joe, you're still sweeping in your district. You're a fucking NIMBY. Don't believe that you actually care about unhoused people. This is for Mark Ridley Thomas. You know, before you were on council, this motion 4118 passed through council and ended up on the city council agenda. I would encourage you to do the same thing with the Nithya Raman and Mike Bonin motion to expand Project Roomkey into commandeer hotels. That should be on the city council agenda ASAP. You can look to Austin, Texas for an example of what to do. They just voted yesterday to take $6 million away from the police budget and to buy a hotel to house the unhoused. That's what we need to do in Los Angeles. We've been calling to defund the police, to house the unhoused, for a long time now. And here's an opportunity for you to step up. You should have seen the way that Austin City Council was celebrated yesterday for their urgent action. You all need to take action now. Take action now, Mark.
Next speaker, please.
Caller with the last four numbers ending in 7186, please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Hi, yes, I'm Alex. I'm calling from CD10, and I want to speak on all agenda items and general public comment.
You have 2 minutes for the items and 1 minute for general public comment. You may begin.
I just want to say quickly, the comments from the NIMBYs along with Lydia saying that people calling in asking that the homeless people not be killed from COVID and from these dangerous sweeps is disgusting. Lydia, you should be ashamed of yourself. The fact that any of you can praise anything you've done when 4 unhoused people are dying a day, there are people in LA who are dying from hypothermia because of this rain. It's disgusting that you're praising yourself. LA has 70,000 hotel rooms vacant, and none of these rooms have been commandeered by the mayor. I know this because I'm currently furloughed from 2 different hotels. And if I'm furloughed, that means that no one's at the hotel because there's no work. The hotels don't want to ruin their image by letting people stay there, so don't give them that option. This is an emergency. I'm so surprised Joe was even talking about damaging NIMBY comments when he literally supported legislation that would have made it illegal to sit or sleep on the sidewalk. He's also called for care sweeps to happen in his district, and the CDC says not to displace these people because they can't shelter in place and it spreads COVID. That makes them more susceptible, and the police who come to those
I want to
sweeps...
ask you to move to general comment, please.
That was a quick 2 minutes. Okay,
Yeah.
so Ms. Farrell is organizing these NIMBYs to call in. They're harassing the homeless people. They don't give a shit about them. They want them away from seeing them. We know that shelters, especially large congregate shelters, cause COVID. They need to have hotel rooms. That's the only safe thing to do. Why is my mutual aid group going out trying to stop people from getting hypothermia? You need to act. Joey Buckets, you need to remove yourself from this council. You are an absolute disgrace. Tu sei una vergogna per gli italiani in tutto il mondo.
All right, we thank you for your testimony. We'll take the next speaker, please.
Caller with the last four numbers ending in 5318, please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Hi, my name is Gina Viola, and I want to make a general public comment. One of the first things my family did when we moved to Hollywood was walk the neighborhood and get familiar with our houseless neighbors. My children were 7 and 8 years old at the time, and this is something we've continued to do routinely for the past 8 years. My children know these people as our neighbors and as humans. They are not afraid of our neighbors, and in fact often come home and tell me about a conversation they've had with someone who is living on the street and what we can do to help them. The people calling in talking about how frightened they are have never even spoken to an unhoused person. This is outrageous. FEMA has left you with no excuse to not commandeer the hotel, motel rooms, and many of those are for sale. You should turn those into Project Homekey. LA City Council subsidizes these hotels with public funds while they refuse to serve the public. Seize the hotels. Friendly negotiations will not work. Sheltering in place has been mandated not only by the CDC, but by LA County as well. Why do you continue to sweep and displace people? You are putting sanitation workers at risk. You are putting our houseless neighbors at risk. You're putting everyone at risk when you do this. This is a public health emergency. Please start treating it as so.
We thank you for your testimony. We'll take the next speaker, please.
Caller with the last four numbers ending in 0985, please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Hi, my name is Peggy Lee Kennedy. I would like to speak on all available items and public comment.
You have 2 minutes for the items and 1 minute for general public comment. You may begin.
Thank you so much, new committee members, and all of the things you've said. But the fact is that nobody is acting with the urgency the situation deserves. There is the problem with you. Reports, committees, meetings. The only urgent thing that the city council really has done was to try and criminalize people who live on the streets. That is horrible. That is not a humanitarian act. Okay, great, tiny homes. that's a great thing to do. I really support that. But the rest of the list, items on your list, forget that. We need to go get those hotels right now. Get people off the streets. And, finding more ways to put people in a hospital who are mentally ill is not the solution. To create softer ways of doing 5150s with the police, that's insane. We need places for people to go. The problem on the street with mental illness is the fact that people don't have places to go. We have to create crisis situations for people to be at. It's not a matter of making the law stronger to throw them in a hospital. We need places for them to be, to recover. God, can you imagine having a major mental illness and living on the street for like years? And the police and the sweeps. It's insane. We have to stop this vicious cycle and do urgent actions, humanitarian urgent actions. Take this opportunity with this new Biden FEMA money, get some hotels, put people in the hotels, make some of them for mentally ill people. Let's act fast, help people, save lives. That's what you need to do. Stop all this talking and back-patting yourself. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense. I have been following this since 2001.
To shift to your general comments now. You've taken
okay. Look, the city has to stop with this pretend carrot stick BS, because really you're just clubbing people and then offering them a carrot with all these rules. People can't handle that. You have to do things in a holistic, humanitarian way. We've got these populations on the street. Let's get them off the street right away. Why am I, a person living on a fixed income, spending my money on tarps and going and finding more tarps and tents to hand out to people on the street so they don't die? Why? And what are you doing about this? That's urgent. Act now. Hotels.
That exhausts your 3 minutes, and we thank you for your testimony. We will now turn to our next speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, we have approximately 10 minutes remaining of public comment. Please proceed.
Caller with the last 4 numbers ending in 4441, please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
My name is Tiffany Duvernay Smith. I'd like to speak on item number 2 and general public comment.
You have 1 minute for the item and 1 minute for general public comment. You may begin.
First, I'd like to state that I am speaking to you as someone who is formerly homeless, and I'd like to reiterate this number, 1248, 1248, 1248. 1,248 homeless fatalities. These are actually people who died in 2020. I support the report on recommended local initiatives that align with the comprehensive crisis response strategy. I agree with the right to housing. I agree that everyone should have a place to call home. And I request that you respond swiftly to the crisis. And I am in support of Project Room Key and Project Home Key. And now I'm switching over to general public comment. I would encourage you to have a plan for people who travel from across the nation because they've heard about our homeless services. They should be on a separate plan for people who have actually been on the streets of Los Angeles for years and years and years. I am also in support of eviction prevention. And so I'm asking that people in Project Room Key do not return to the streets. And I would encourage you to stop demobilization now of Project Room Key guests, because I know that we are now being reimbursed at 100%, and no one should go back to the streets. And my last request is that all listeners especially the decision makers, tap into the justice and love that is traveling through your veins as you make the decisions that you make. Thank you very much.
We thank you very much. We'll now take the next speaker.
Caller with the last four numbers ending in 5601. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Hello, my name is Jane from K-Town for All and Services Not Sweeps. I'd like to speak on item 4 and general public comment.
You have 1 minute to address the item and 1 minute for general public comment. You may begin.
On item 4, the tiny home village in Echo Park, we of course support tiny homes, but there is absolutely no reason why this motion should pass with zero input from the unhoused community in Echo Park Lake. Any approval of this should be conditional on input from the unhoused residents there. The voices of the housed residents should not be elevated over the people who are being served by this tiny home village. And on to my general public comment, I'd like to welcome the new committee members. We've heard a lot of impassioned comments today from both sides, and I think that's part of the issue is that this is not a both sides issue. We expect a baseline standard of humanity from our elected officials. At no point is it ever okay to violate human rights, no matter how loud and incessant the NIMBYs are who are calling in. It's never okay, no matter how you justify it. It's never okay to steal from the poorest and most vulnerable people in Los Angeles. Destroying people's makeshift homes, especially in a pandemic, is wrong. I'd like to urge my council member, Mark Ridley-Thomas, to waive the items from Nithya Raman and Mike Bonin on the Care and Care Plus reforms and commandeering hotels to the full city council so that we can vote on it as soon as possible. We need to commandeer the hotels. Our demands since the very beginning have been the same. Commandeer the hotels, oppose warehousing people in large congregate shelters, and let people shelter in place if there are no shelters. Do not sweep and displace people. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We'll take the next speaker.
Caller with the last four numbers, 1336. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Yes, hi, my name is Michelle. I'm speaking to item 4 and general comments.
You have 1 minute for the item and 1 minute for general public comment. You may begin.
I'm calling to support the tiny home project in terms of it being one possible compassionate solution to the issue of the unhoused currently living at Echo Park Lake. I support the Care Plus services at the lake, and I'd also like to see the lake return to its recently restored condition that allowed it to be enjoyed by the diverse community that surrounds it. 25-year resident, lifelong Angelino for the past and third generation Angelino. In general, I would like to see the unhoused issue addressed in terms of mental health services, attendant crime and sanitation issues. The amount of trash and graffiti have escalated, and the amount of trash, graffiti, and lost souls that I see wandering the streets have escalated exponentially over the past year. And I certainly want compassionate services and don't regard it as an us versus them situation. And I'd be happy to build a shelter in my backyard with city monies if that was offered as a solution. Yes, please open up the hotel rooms, and that's the end of my comment.
All right. Thank you very much for your testimony. We'll take the next speaker, please.
Caller with the last four numbers, 7252. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Hello, my name is Ann, and I'm calling from Echo Park. I'm a 30-year resident, and first I'd like to speak to item 4 and general public comments. I support the tiny home project as one of many solutions. I also believe that this is not an us or them situation. It's an all situation. We all basically have the same goals, and which is to make sure that everyone is compassionately housed, mental health care is given, sanitation is there, the lake is returned to the whole neighborhood, the children, everybody, and it can be a win-win situation. I also want to note that HUD has had 80% of its funding taken out, and we need to get that back through the new federal administration so that more and more housing becomes available. But it is an emergency now. I think the hotels are a great idea, and also tiny homes, and also keeping the parks clean. Thank you.
We thank you for your testimony. We're at 11:10. We will now hear from the final caller.
Caller with the last four numbers ending in 8919. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you wish to speak on.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Cool. This is Lane. I'm calling in to speak on item 4 and then general public comment.
You have 1 minute for the item and 1 minute for general public comment. You may begin, and please speak up.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, yeah, for item 4, I support the tiny housing. I want to echo some of the statements from previous callers, namely what Jane was saying about this needs to be done with unhoused approval. I mean, we heard a lot from homeowners clearly reading from a script that they obviously got from Mitchell Farrell, that he's working with Friends of Echo Park. It's clearly a coordinated effort to drown out the voices of the unhoused, but I implore you to listen to the unhoused residents of Echo Park when making this decision, and any approval of this motion should be predicated on their input and not the housed. I think it's just kind of ridiculous to hear all of these people in homes safe and warm complaining about safety when, you know, individual volunteers are going out and buying tarps and blankets to make sure people don't die. And you are doing nothing. You're not doing anything to help. You're doing nothing. You're sitting on your ass and you're talking about things that you might, you know, build months from now, while people are actively dying and a storm is coming in that's going to kill so many more people. You could open up hotels today. You could seize the hotels today, and you should do it. I guess I'll move on to my public comment and just say that Joy Bruscaino, Joy Buckets, you're a complete fraud, and we see you. You talk about, you know, you're praising yourself for what you've accomplished. What you've accomplished is that you're sweeping people as they're dying on the streets, and you're offering them no solutions and no help to get them in a better position. You coward and NIMBYs. You are a NIMBY. So I think you should resign from this committee in disgrace. And yeah, I want to see more urgency on Mike Bonnet and Nithya Raman's proposal to commandeer housing. I mean, we have 100% FEMA reimbursement for non-congregate shelter right now. 100%. It won't even cost the city money to do it, and you guys still aren't doing it. It's fucking bullshit, and you need to get your shit together and act with some urgency, like there are actually people dying.
Sir, we thank you for your testimony. We will now move to the next item on the agenda, and that completes the public comment for today. We thank all of the callers who did call in, and we thank those who were attempting to be heard. We've exhausted the time for that portion of our agenda at this point. And therefore, we move to the next items before us. And members of the committee, unless there are any objections, I'd like to suggest that we move items 3 through 6 onto the consent calendar. Are there any objections?
Mr. Chair, this is Vice Chair Kevin DeLeon. I'd like to pull number 3 just for questions.
All right. Number 3 has been requested to be heard by Mr. DeLeon. Any other member wishing to hear any other matter? All right. With that being the case, 4 through 6.
Excuse me. This is Nathan Holmes with the CEO. We have a technical correction on item number 4.
Please proceed with the CEO's office.
Thank you. It's a small correction. We would just like the record to be changed so that the name of the landlord is changed from Kirby Properties to Kirby Properties LP, Limited Partnership. That is all.
Thank you. Technical correction on item number 4, so noted. Are there any other comments to be made with respect to moving items 4 through 6 onto consent? Seeing that there's no objection, Madam Clerk, would you please read the items into the record before we take the vote?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Item number 4 is a report from the Municipal Facilities Committee authorizing the Department of General Services to execute a lease for the property located at 1455 to 1461 North Alvarado Street for use as an interim housing facility, noting the technical correction made by staff. This item is also referred to the Ad Hoc Committee on COVID-19 Recovery and Neighborhood Investment. Item number 5 is a City Administrative Officer report and Los Angeles Housing and Community Investment Department report relative to a request for authority to issue tax-exempt multifamily conduit revenue notes for the development of the Mariposa Lily Apartments, a supportive housing project located at 1055 South Mariposa Avenue. Item number 6 is a City Administrative Officer report and Los Angeles Housing and Community Investment Department report relative to a request for authority to issue a tax-exempt multifamily conduit revenue note for Otzi's Place, a supportive housing project located at 16015 Sherman Way. That concludes the reading of the items.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Members of the committee, you've heard the items that are before us, which indicates that we're now ready to dispose of the matter. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Councilmember Ridley Thomas as chair.
Aye.
Councilmember De Leon.
Aye.
Councilmember Buscaino.
Aye.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Aye.
Councilmember Rahman.
Aye.
We have a unanimous approval of the items to go on consent, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Clerk. Members of the committee, the request was made by the Vice Chair to take up item number 4, and if it's the committee's pleasure, we will do so now and then move with the balance of the agenda items, which would include item number 2. Mr. De Leon, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, as well as colleagues. On file item number 3, after...
Number 3, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. After analyzing the costs here, frankly, I feel a deep sense of concern, as do probably most members of the public, about the spending associated with the challenge grant funding. The whole point of the challenge grant, even embedded in the name, was to challenge the conventional approaches by introducing innovative methods to reduce costs and to escalate, or I should say accelerate, project construction. As it stands, unless I'm mistaken, this project will cost a total of $509,529 per unit, of which only $113,898 per unit is from Proposition HHH. And the project won't begin construction actually until March 2022. And with regards to timing, it's been mentioned the project will use a light gauge steel framing product, Prescient, I understand what it's called, which will expedite construction by approximately 1 month. Look, and I just say this, with much respect to the folks behind this project, 1 month is not innovation. At cost of $509,529 per unit is not innovation. And the original estimate, the cost was supposed to be $479,000. So this is over $30,000 more than the original estimate. And innovation is not what we should be doing. It's what we must be doing. So I want to take a step back. I do want to commend the city and the mayor for identifying the need for how we use our HHH funding efficiently. That's the commitment we need to reach our goals. But I also want to make sure that for these innovative projects that we're doing everything possible to make sure we're actually hitting timelines, meeting original proposed costs, if not reducing them altogether. And I know this particular project is not in my district, and I probably believe there's going to be numerous projects in CD14 as well as throughout the city that have very similar costs associated to this project. So in short, I'd like to see if we can get a report back by the next committee meeting on all of the challenge grant projects originally submitted, including the schedules, the cost, and the comparison to their current statuses. And lastly, I'd like to see where challenge grant project is in its respective entitlement process and where it specifically is on acquiring all of its funding. Mr. Chair, I'm more than happy to offline have my staff with the more specificity submit the questions or the request. I don't believe that this meets the standards of Mayor Eric Garcetti when we talk about innovative projects, because when we talk about innovative projects, we're talking about moving quickly on these types of projects. So
Thank
with
you very
that,
much, Mr.
thank you
De Leon. All right, are there persons on the staff who wish to comment on this item in an attempt to satisfy the concerns raised by Mr. De Leon? And I think it's probably appropriate to sort out and whose council district this is to the extent that there's a member of the committee who wants to comment accordingly.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Selby, Senior Project Manager for the Housing Challenge in the Mayor's Office of City Homelessness Initiatives.
Please proceed.
This project is in Council District 15. We're happy to answer questions in greater detail, but I will point out that this developer won the challenge back in 2019 with costs below the average per unit cost done by the housing challenge. By Triple H overall. Their costs were lower, but they actually won the challenge with projected costs higher than where they are now at $509,000. So it was a concern of ours with their original proposal for this project. We've worked, and they have worked very hard to lower their project costs, but it's we're trying to balance costs with other innovations that they're using, and so cost isn't the only driving factor in deciding whether or not we move forward with testing innovations. It is an important factor, of course, but not the only factor. And one of the innovations that Bridge is using on this project is to couple low-income housing tax credits with opportunity zone financing. That has been done very few times across the country, and they, I think, just recently have come to a structure for getting that financing in place with a single investor who will utilize both the low-income housing tax credits and the opportunity zone financing. And we're hoping that that is a scalable and replicable means of financing the project that we can see replicated going forward. And I would point out that the more times we practice this, the more times we create the financial structure and documents, and everyone learns about how these projects work, the transactional costs go down. But it is not necessarily the cheapest way to go the first time we try something.
All right, Mr. Bussolino, please.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Mr. De Leon, for raising this. And you're absolutely right. But at the same time, the respondent was, and Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong, apparently there's 2 or 3 buckets that in order for them to qualify in the innovation portion of it was, 1, accelerating timeline and using creative financing. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
That's correct.
And part of that creative financing was, in this case, I believe it's Bridge, would reduce public finance by infusing dollars in opportunity zones, correct?
That's correct. Opportunity zone financing utilizes other sources typically seen outside of affordable housing financing, utilizes other private financing.
And this is how the competition was set up, correct?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
This was how the competition, the challenge was set up in that space.
That's correct.
So I think, Mr. De Leon, Mr. Chair, and if you see fit, as we move forward, you're absolutely right. How do we build housing cheaper and quicker? And that's something that we all need to make in this body, in this committee. And Ms. Rodriguez has served on this committee before. How do we change, working alongside Mayor Garcetti's office, the structure of demanding how we change the competition to have more creative financing to build housing at all levels quicker and cheaper. And this is, I know, the private sector developers today are willing and able to do that, but oftentimes bureaucracy gets in the way. And hearing at the onset of this committee meeting, we're going to change that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Through the chair. And thank you very much, Mr. Buscaino. And as I had mentioned a few moments ago, I suspect I'll have a number of projects myself, very similar in terms of numbers in my own very district in CD14. And I know that every council member is advocating very hard to do everything everything possible to put a roof over our unhoused neighbors' heads. The last thing I'll say is, and thank you very much, Elizabeth. And this is not to put you on the spot. This, trust me, it's not a sort of a got you moment. It's how we sort of kind of break this down. But when we talk about opportunity zones, when we talk about innovation and creativity and tax credits, and all the other types of financing schemes, when you finance a deal, ultimately at the end of the day, it still costs $509,000. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the output, it's the outcome. So I think this is something, obviously, that we have to, dig in a little deeper, because it's how much money we got and what's sustainable. How much money we're going to be getting from the feds, how much money we're going to be getting from the state. Are we going to be able to re-up on HHH and have more money? And how can we use this in a much more efficient manner so we can build more homes as opposed to less homes? The last thing I'll say is that, I know Monica Rodriguez has a tremendous amount of real estate, experience working with homeowners and the Real Estate Association. I think we can go to Councilmember Monica Rodriguez and ask her if she can find us a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in the Valley or anywhere in the city. And we can close escrow for $500,000, $600,000. You see, so that's the point we're getting at right there.
Thank you
very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Leon. But we don't do real estate transactions on the committee in that manner, particularly putting any members' real estate license at risks. Thank you.
Listen, I've never been a realtor. Okay,
but I know from your experience, Mr. Chair,
all right. Well, thanks very much,
tongue in cheek.
Leon. Mr. De Leon raises questions that have been of concern to a number of people. He offers CD 14 as an opportunity to drill down with more specificity on the pros and cons of the proposed competition. Ms. Shelby, you heard him extend an invitation to you to sort through his projects, but for now, the item before us is item number 3. Mr. Buscaino moves, Ms. Rodriguez seconds.
Mr. Chair, I think Elizabeth has something for you. I don't know if you caught that.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Chair, I think Elizabeth had something for you, sir.
The chair is moving forward, unless there's an urgent item to be.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Don't step on your own promise, Mr. Buscaino.
Mr. Chair, just remind you, Mr. Chair, there is an amendment just for the report back on the questions.
Right.
Okay.
And the objective was to make sure that CD14 got the particular attention that it desires with respect to its Madam Clerk, moved by Mr. Buscaino, second by Ms. Rodriguez. Please call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Councilmember Ridley Thomas as chair.
Sorry, can I ask a question here? What exactly, the amendment is a report back on what
Yes.
exactly?
Pursuant to Mr. De Leon's questions about how cost savings can be achieved, looking with a greater degree of detail that would be beneficial to the respective members of the committee and to the council as a whole. The chair is recommending that Ms. Shelby have a conversation with Mr. De Leon and or his designees as to the components and the mechanics of this particular effort and begin there in the process. So it's amended to get more information back, and that is essentially what will happen. All right? Thanks very much. Madam Clerk.
Yes, proceeding, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Ridley Thomas as chair.
Madam Clerk, you're still muted.
My apologies. Councilmember Ridley Thomas as chair, I believe, was a yes.
Aye.
Councilmember De Leon.
Aye, as amended.
Councilmember Rahman.
Aye.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Aye.
Councilmember Buscaino.
Aye.
That's a unanimous vote, sir.
We thank you very much. We'll now proceed.
Mr. Chair, I do apologize, Mr. Chair. Before we move forward, I would like to ask for a clarification or make a clarification. For the previous vote on items 5 and 6, the action was to receive and file the housing reports and adopt the recommendation in the CAO reports. Can you verify that, Mr. Chair?
You broke up as you were speaking, therefore I couldn't hear all of what you were saying, ma'am.
I am so sorry. If members could and folks in the committee meeting could mute if they're not speaking, that will help with the feedback. So the clarification, Mr. Chair, was that for items 5 and 6 taken on consent previously, that the action was to receive and file the housing report and adopt the recommendations from the CAO report.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next item before us then is item number 2. This is in relation to the motion which was introduced on December the 15th regarding the city's comprehensive crisis response strategy that was referred to this committee. Madam Clerk, would you please read the item before the record?
Yes, sir. Item number 2 is motion of Farrell, Ridley Thomas, Blumenfield, Martinez, relative to directing the city administrative officer with the assistance of the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority and chief legislative analyst to give a verbal status report to this committee on recommended local initiatives that align with the Governor's Council of Regional Homeless Advisors Comprehensive Crisis Response Strategy. This item is also referred to the Housing Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so members of the committee will start the discussion on what I think is a critical venture with an oral update from multiple agencies tasked with overseeing the city's response. We're hoping to approach the committee's work moving forward in a manner that is consistent with the main elements of the city's homeless strategy, namely prevention, homeless creation, rehousing, and finally, the street engagement to assist unhoused residents. It is my hope that we will help each other by forging a path forward as we work together within the city, as well as with other public agencies and community partners to establish a legislative, policy, and budgetary framework to scale up our work in a manner that paves the way for those things that can be very substantial as we seek to spell progress in this area. Today we'll have a joint presentation by the CLA, the CAO, HCID, LASA, the CEO, and DHS. Mr. John Wickham from the CLA will help us through this with the matter at hand, PowerPoint before us. And members, the goal is to get through the entire presentation, which will take approximately 15 minutes. And then we can open up for questions from the presenters. And members of the public that wish to follow the presentation can download the PowerPoint slides via the City Council's file management system. And so to get us started, let me call on Meg Barclay from the CEO, and then Heidi Marston with LASA. We'll begin in that manner. Please take it away.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Ridley Thomas and rest of the Homelessness and Poverty Committee. As you see, we have a great panel of presenters before you today on this item, and the item will be structured according to the categories of work that are needed for a comprehensive response to homelessness, including prevention, housing creation, rehousing, and street management. And so the panelists here will all speak to different components of each of those different components. But we're starting off with a presentation of the city's enhanced comprehensive homeless strategy, as well as LASA's strategic plan. And then we'll go through each of the components I just described and end with a discussion of the city-county collaboration that's been happening to date with myself and Phil Ansell from the County Homeless Initiative. So to start off for some context, the city's enhanced comprehensive homeless strategy is an update to the original city comprehensive homeless strategy in 2018. It was informed by the first 2 years of implementation of that strategy, which was largely report-based and information gathering-based. It was comprised of 64 individual strategies, and the enhanced comprehensive homeless strategy consolidated those 64 strategies into 17 action-oriented strategies organized into 6 functional categories. And you can see those categories are listed in the table at the bottom of the slide. The ECHS is designed to reflect the actions that are necessary by the city as a municipal government in response to the homelessness crisis, including a couple of strategies, for example, that were not included in the original comprehensive homeless strategy, such as supportive housing, believe it or not, and outreach, which are 2 things that the city, in its responsibility as a municipality, is very extensively involved in. Supportive housing has been a part of the city's response to homelessness for more than 20 years. And we have also funded outreach since before the comprehensive homeless strategy was established. And so it's really important to have the enhanced comprehensive homeless strategy accurately reflect the work that's being done by the city, and also to reflect what is the appropriate response of the municipal government versus other levels of government that have different responsibilities, which all come together, hopefully, to address the 4 components that I described earlier in the presentation. And so you'll see just one other thing, that the way the strategy is organized, and I know we're going to have a more in-depth discussion about the city's enhanced comprehensive homeless strategy a little bit later, but if you look at the next slide, there's a graphic that sort of lays out the 17 strategies into the and gives you sort of the structure of the strategy. And each of these strategies has a policy brief that describes the work being done by the many city departments that are all part of each of these strategies that have a role to play.
Meg, could you send it to the council offices, because we can't even see this?
Yes,
it's not even. Okay.
Yeah.
So we can see. Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Yes. We'll make sure that you all have a copy of the strategy before the next time we discuss this. But this is more just to get a sense of the organizational structure, and you should have a copy of these slides before the end of the day. So this is just a structural sort of preview of the more in-depth presentation that we'll be doing on the enhanced comprehensive homeless strategy in future homelessness and poverty. So we can move on to LASA's presentation of their strategic plan.
Thanks, Meg, and thank you all for having us here today. I'm Heidi Marston, Executive Director for LASA. Just to ground us a little bit in what you're looking at, As we look at comprehensive homeless response systems, whether it's LA or anywhere in the country, there's really 4 parts that make up a homeless response system. The first part is the prevention. So we talk about this a lot as inflow. So what are the things that are driving people into the homelessness response system? What are the issues that are causing people to lose their housing? So there's really an entire network of opportunity that needs to happen on the prevention side. The second component is housing creation, which we all know is the development of affordable housing, of permanent supportive housing, as well as the sustainment of affordable housing and low-income units. So that would be the second piece of the system. The third piece is rehousing, and that is really where LAHSA sits squarely. And this is everything from the outreach when somebody becomes homeless to rehousing somebody and providing the supportive services as they're in their unit. So it's everything from the outreach to the interim housing, all of the shelter opportunities, and then rehousing. And finally, and this is particularly important in jurisdictions like Los Angeles, where we have a high number of people who are living outdoors, there's a street management component. So we have outreach for the purpose of rehousing people and getting them connected to services. But in areas like Los Angeles, we also have a need to do outreach for the purpose of public health and safety. So making sure that people who are experiencing homelessness outdoors have access to hygiene services, to food, and that the conditions of living on the street, to the extent that that's the reality we live in, are at least as safe as possible. So these are really the 4 components of any rehousing system. And if you go to the next slide, this talks about what LAHSA's role within that. And as I said, it's really number 3, which is rehousing. Part of our strategic plan, which is driven by the work of Measure H and Triple H, because LAHSA and our system has seen such tremendous growth in terms of the resources coming, LAHSA is really moving from being a grant administrator, so essentially a pass-through entity that passes funds to nonprofits on behalf of the federal government, the state, the city, and the county, to being a system administrator. And as you see today from the variety of people and partners that are on this call, there's an immense amount of collaboration and coordination that needs to happen across all levels of government, across nonprofit agencies, with housing developers and providers, to make sure that our comprehensive homeless response is aligned and that we're using all of the funding and the resources to their highest and best use. So this is where LAHSA is positioned to become the system administrator. It's not about LAHSA owning every single piece of the system, but rather LAHSA kind of being the center of gravity to say, here's where we're going as a system, and making sure that we're pulling in the right resources and using the right levers to have all of our investments go as far as possible, with the outcome in mind always being rehousing as many people as possible. Go to the next slide. Can you go to the next? There you go. So as a system administrator, as opposed to a grant administrator, there's really 6 pillars that we think about. So there's the system management, which is your strategic planning, your stakeholder management. There's the external relations and communications that need to happen. So how are we aligning the funding between all of the various funding sources? How are we educating the public about what our homeless response system broadly is doing and how the issue is being addressed? There's the grant administration, which I talked about earlier, which is really the passing through of the funding, making sure that funds are being spent, making sure that there's compliance and performance metrics that are tied to the funding that are going to nonprofits and organizations who deliver services. There's the really important data collection and analysis that's required. So our homeless management information system, or HMIS, that captures all the activities, that coordinates our by name list so we know who we're servicing, what kind of resources, and helps people have a central data system that tracks all of the clients that we're serving. There's the health and safety response, which I talked about, which is really this health and safety of individuals who are living outdoors or who are unhoused. And then, importantly, the equity piece of this. So how do we make sure, recognizing the inequities that exist across our system, the systemic and institutional racism that drives people of color into homelessness at a highly disproportionate rate of white counterparts, how do we make sure that our interventions are tailored to address that and overcome those inequities that have driven people to where they are, and that we're dispersing funding and resources in an equitable way. And then finally, and we'll share these slides with you as well, this is just a broad funding overview to help you get the picture. So the yellow on the left-hand side is the breakout of all of the different funding sources that come to LAHSA. So there's federal, state, county, city, and then a variety of other sources. LAHSA takes that funding and puts it out through direct programming that now represents over 400 individual contracts to nonprofit providers for everything from outreach to access centers, to winter shelters, to storage, to permanent housing, safe parking, you name it. We're having contracts go out the door that we're helping administer across the city and the county. So recognizing this is a very broad overview, but hopefully it gives you the broad context of how our rehousing system is structured. And I think now we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about the prevention, which is the first pillar that I talked about, and where that sits within the broader system.
All right, thank you very much. Members of the committee, consider that an introduction by both Meg and Heidi. Now let's look at some of the elements of the comprehensive homelessness response system. So we'll look to Abigail Marquez and Alex Devin, and finally Phil Ansel. Let's proceed accordingly.
Okay, wonderful. Good morning, council members. Abigail Marquez, Assistant General Manager with the Housing and Community Investment Department. We appreciate the opportunity to highlight HCLA's efforts to support low-income families and other vulnerable populations across the city. In addition to managing over $300 million of city funds allocated to LAHSA to implement the city's homelessness priorities, HCLA also contracts with over 55 community partners to deliver coordinated, outcome-driven services to individuals and families who are in the lowest income bracket, earning an average of $19,000 or less a year, living check to check, and in many ways on the brink of eviction, displacement, and homelessness. We are diligently focused on implementing programs and policies to address the root causes of homelessness, issues such as poverty, domestic violence, lack of access to resources for vulnerable populations, and we provide even further upstream services to ensure children in the city have the support and resources they need to succeed. In the last program year, in program year 1920, we served over 100,000 unduplicated individuals through our domestic violence and human trafficking shelter program, through our network of 16 family source centers, which serve as the city's largest anti-poverty system, and through the county-wide housing opportunities for persons with age program. This represents an increase of over 100% of people served from the prior year. And that is largely due to the increased demand for services as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. What's really important to highlight from this screen is the impact that we are tracking and the efforts that we're making to prevent displacement. In program year 1920, our systems helped families and individuals access over $50 million in cash benefits or increased income. And we're tracking these metrics across all three of our systems. This was done by helping families access public benefits. We work closely with the county, particularly DPSS, tax credits such as the Earned Income Tax Credit, the California Tax Credit, emergency financial assistance, and other supportive services. Next slide. HCLA is continuing to provide immediate relief through various initiatives. We managed the largest emergency rental assistance program in the country, which reached over 50,000 households. And we're gearing up now for phase 2 of this program that will include over $200 million available for rental assistance. We are also launching a citywide eviction defense program that closely mirrors the county's eviction defense program. And we feel strongly that we need to continue to target prevention efforts on vulnerable populations, such as domestic violence and human trafficking victims. This population represents a significant percentage of the overall homeless population, Efforts such as Project Safe Haven that was funded with the CRF dollars provided temporary housing and, at hotels and motels for approximately 3,000 domestic violence and human trafficking survivors. This was also the largest program for domestic violence and human trafficking survivors in the country. These are critical services, and we encourage the city to continue to fund these types of programs. And lastly, we need to secure more Section 8 vouchers. The Housing Authority is managing a little over 50,000 vouchers in their portfolio, and we're only receiving a new allocation of approximately 3,000 vouchers each year. I will take any questions. I'm happy to take any questions, and I'm just really excited that the conversation today is also focused on prevention, which we know continues to provide a critical support to a number of households across the city.
Good morning. Good morning. This is I'm Phil Ansell. I'm the director of the Los Angeles County Homeless Initiative. As part of our work on preventing homelessness, the Board of Supervisors has directed us to look at the way in which mainstream county departments such as DPSS and the Department of Children and Family Services, the Sheriff, Probation Department, and others can contribute to reducing the inflow of people into homelessness, which resulted in a 15-point action plan submitted to the board last year. 3 of those 15 items involve funding that are listed at the bottom of the slide. I'll pull out one of those. We are implementing a new homelessness prevention unit housed in the Department of Health Services, which will focus on how single adults identified through the use of predictive analytics by the UCLA California Policy Lab as at elevated risk of becoming homeless. The predictive analytics is based on the county and LAHSA service use history. And the work done to date shows that about 40% of the people identified as likely to become, most likely to become homeless, do in fact become homeless in the following period of time. That's very important because normally efforts to predict who will become homeless only identify 5 to 10% of people who actually become homeless. So if this proves successful, it would both support the investment of additional funding in homelessness prevention because of more effective targeting of those prevention resources than has ever before been possible.
Good morning. My name is Alex Devin. I am the manager of problem-solving implementations with the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. I am here to discuss our homeless and prevention and diversion strategies, which are strategies 4.6 with the City of Los Angeles. First, I will be talking about our problem-solving intervention, formerly known as diversion. Problem-solving is an intervention that seeks to assist households that are imminently at risk of losing their housing or recently housed and are in a housing crisis by using strength-based approaches, empowerment theory, motivational interviewing, and really an organic way of assisting people to lift themselves out of their housing crisis. It is a hand-up model intervention. Currently, we are staffing 54 dedicated problem-solving specialists throughout the City of Los Angeles. And since our launch less than 18 months ago, we have resolved well over 650 households' housing crises through this intervention. It is a very low-cost intervention, and it has been being proven to be very effective. In the city and the county, we have created the first guidance manual, specific tracking mechanisms, and training curriculums that are actually being looked at by HUD and other continuums throughout the United States. So we're really proud of this intervention and the steps we're making to move it forward. Additionally, under this intervention, next slide please, is our homeless prevention strategy. Our homeless prevention strategy is a short-term housing intervention, similarly framed like a rapid rehousing program for persons that are imminently at risk of losing their housing It can provide up to 6 months worth of financial assistance. It is paired with legal service providers to assist with any barriers to persons not losing their housing, such as evictions. It provides financial assistance and supportive services, as well as connecting individuals, families, and youth to services within the community to help them sustain their housing over the long term. In the city of Los Angeles, we currently have 5 youth providers, 5 family providers, and 11 adult providers providing this service currently. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much to both Abigail, Alex, and Phil for their presentations on prevention. So we now go to housing creation. 2 parts, interim and permanent. Meg Barclay and Sewell. In that order, please.
Thank you. I'll be presenting on the city's efforts to expand the supply of interim housing. I apologize for the slides were, my slides were a little bit, the font was a little bigger when I drafted them, but I think the combination, some other formatting got applied. But so looking at this in sort of 2 phases, kind of the early part of the implementation of our strategy, and then beginning in 2018 when we kind of shifted gears. So starting between 2016 and 2018, remembering 2016 is when the initial comprehensive homeless strategy was adopted, also happened to be the year that Proposition HHH was approved in November. And so there was a big focus in the first 7 months of after Proposition HHH was adopted or was approved by voters to get that program stood up. And the city was able to go from approval by the voters to the first round of approved projects in about 5 months. But that took a lot of very focused effort, and then getting through the first couple of rounds of other commitment recommendations was a big focus of the whole team working on implementing the city's homeless strategy. But also at that time, the city and the county both dramatically increased funding for interim housing services by providing money for operations for service providers to open existing unfunded capacity. So where they may have had beds that didn't have funding attached to them, to be able to make those beds now available to people, or also to establish new beds. And new capacity was funded through those efforts, but it didn't sufficiently expand the interim housing supply to address the need. And so it also, as a part of Prop HHH implementation, the city released 2 requests for proposals for the facilities program within Prop HHH, which provided capital funding for nonprofits to receive no-cost loans to establish new facilities or update existing facilities, including interim housing. We did not receive very many applications for interim housing that would establish new beds or new shelters. A lot of Proposition HHH facilities program was addressing a lot of unfunded. Until then, there really wasn't a source of funding for capital for existing homeless services facilities, and there was a lot of rehab work to be done, and that's a lot of what those 2 rounds of the facilities program funded. And then we discontinued the facilities program in order to focus the rest of the Prop HHH funding on creating new supportive units going forward. So beginning in 2018, since we had gotten the Proposition HHH infrastructure in place, we shifted to interim housing production as those new units that were being funded were going to be constructed and coming online. So in 2018, the Abridged Home Program was launched with the goal of establishing 1 interim housing facility in each council district and 1,500 total beds. And you've heard from several council members who embraced that program and who have new facilities in their districts. And in 2020, as you're all aware, we also launched the city's COVID-19 homelessness roadmap in response to the LA Alliance for Human Rights lawsuit. There was an MOU that was executed between the city of Los Angeles and the county of Los Angeles to establish 6,700 homeless interventions by December 16th, 2021. And then there's sort of a breakdown of those interventions and the numbers, but I'll go through them quickly. 700 of those interventions are in existing agreements with the county to come online by April 16th of this year. And 5,300 other new interventions are also to come online by April 16th of this year, with an additional 700 new interventions by December 16th, 2021. So the county's commitment to this MOU is to provide up to 50% of operating costs, or up to $293 million over 5 years. The city will pay any capital costs to establish the new interventions and pay 50% of operating costs up to $55 per bed per night, and 100% of the costs over $55 per bed per night, estimated to be $300 million over 5 years. The status of these, just to provide a quick status of these efforts for Bridge Home, 28 facilities are currently completed or in progress, with 2,120 total beds. 307 of these beds in 4 of the facilities are also included in the COVID-19 homelessness roadmap as a part of the beds under existing agreements with the county. And the roadmap status as of December 31st, up to 8,251 interventions are currently in process, and 1,847 of those are completed, open and in operation. And that includes the 3,000 rapid rehousing shared housing slots that have been funded with the CARES Act Emergency Solutions Grant. And 400 of those slots have been placed, or there have been placements for almost 500 of those slots. So we can move on to permanent housing.
Thank you, Meg, and good morning, good afternoon. Ann Sewell, General Manager, Housing and Community Investment Department. As Meg mentioned, in 2016, early 2016, when the joint city-county comprehensive homelessness strategies were released, they barely mentioned supportive housing. And really, from the city's point of view, it was because we had very few resources to build it. We were building approximately 300 units per year at that time. And so shortly after that, with the leadership of the mayor and the council and the support of external partners, the beginnings of what became the Measure HHH campaign to move that 300 units a year to 1,000 a year were started. So we passed HHH, 1.2 billion over 10 years, and as of right now, here's where the pipeline is. We have 7,300 units, so 300 over what our goal was, in the regular HHH program, 661 in the Housing Innovation Challenge, and the managed pipeline, which has been producing its 300 units per year, is at 2,064. So at the end of year 4, we are over the 10,000 unit goal in the pipeline. We closed 20 projects in the last 5 months that went into construction. So as we had suspected, it took a while to get things started up, to get some of the supporting things like CEQA exemption for all supportive housing in the city of LA passed. And now we are starting to see the results of some of that work. The average city subsidy is $135,000 per unit of HHH money. And what that gets us is a 55-year covenanted, fully funded project. As we'll talk about, I'm sure, a lot more in this committee, the assumption built into the 10,000 units with the amount of money in HHH was that we would leverage it with other sources. So, we do, if the median cost per the controller is $535,000, at $135,000 we are a unit, we are leveraging those with other funds, which adds costs, but certainly gets us more units. If we hadn't leveraged, we'd be at about 3,000 units. In addition to that, this year we did Project Home Key with the Housing Authority, which gave us 210 units in 5 buildings very quickly because the leverage was built into it. It all came from the state in one big pot of money, and we were able to put it together very quickly, and that's a model we would love to pursue in the future. And then we understand, as part of prevention, as part of just our affordable housing work, families need a place to live, individuals need a place to live that is affordable. And so in addition to supportive housing, every year we are financing approximately 730 units. And we are incentivizing with our planning department tools of the transit-oriented communities and density bonus, 3,700 units a year without subsidy, then those are targeted primarily to extremely low-income people. So that's been a real success in capturing the value of some of those planning incentives. Next slide, please, John. The resources that we have available to do housing development include approximately $25 million a year from the Home Housing Trust from the federal government. Our own linkage fee puts out about $10 million a year, mostly because people are choosing to build affordable housing units on site using the transit-oriented communities tool. And then we also use publicly owned land, not only city-owned land, but sometimes other agencies, as well as the density bonus. And now I will turn it over to the rehousing discussion.
Good morning, Marina Benchev, Associate Director for Systems Coordination with the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. So you've heard a little bit about the interim housing types and the permanent housing types that the city has worked to bring online or is bringing online through various funding sources and initiatives. LASA then either receives funding and administers these dollars to service providers, or in our role as a system lead, facilitates access to these resources for people experiencing homelessness through our role in the coordinated entry system. So I'll share briefly about a couple of the housing program types that are available for people experiencing homelessness to help resolve their homelessness, noting that for all of these program types, there are variations for individuals that are adults, that are in the youth population or transitional age youth, or for families that have youth or dependent minors in their households. And I'll also note that the great thing about these programs is that they are not one size fits all. And so programs are intended to be tailored to the needs of the individual and to serve individuals where they're at according to their need. So first is rapid rehousing, which was mentioned briefly earlier in the presentation today. This is a time-limited program. Households that are enrolled are generally enrolled for anywhere between 1 to 2 years, and they can receive various types of financial assistance and case management tailored to their needs. This is intended to help individuals or households get back into housing and maintain that housing through the help of the financial assistance component, which can include things like security deposits, utility deposits, help with arrearages if those are involved, furniture, just anything needed to get an individual or a household back on their feet. There's also the case management and supportive services that are available, which can include referrals to mental health programs, help with employment, help with childcare, whatever the individual or the household needs to be able to stabilize back into housing. Next, we have shallow subsidy, which is similar to rapid rehousing in that there is both a rental assistance or financial assistance component and some case management. The distinction with this program is that it is shallow and longer. So by shallow, we mean less financial assistance and over a longer term period of time. Reason for that being that these are the target audience for this program are households that primarily are experiencing homelessness due to a financial reason. They're severely rent burdened and just likely are lower income overall, which is to say there's not a lot of other needs in the household other than poverty and the need for some additional support to make sure that they can stay inside. Next slide, please. Next, I'll share about permanent supportive housing as a housing intervention type. You heard Anne share about the work that the city is doing to fund a lot of these projects. But permanent supportive housing, as the name permanent indicates, means that the financial assistance is permanent and the services are permanent. So to the extent that someone wants to keep these resources or keep these services, there is no length of time with which they can receive those services. And so really the target audience for a resource like this is somebody who's going to need that permanent long-term help in order to actually help stay inside. Case management tends to be a little bit more intensive because that's likely what is needed, and the financial assistance is deeper and more durable. These resources can show up in the mainstream market through the use of a housing voucher, such as available through HACLA, or can show up in the context of a building funded, for example, through HSID, and would be called a project-based model. Of course, there are also resources funded by county, by state, by federal, etc. But LASA, in our role in the coordinated entry system, helps connect people to these resources and helps to facilitate access. A lot of these resources, permanent supportive housing, also come with the services available through the county, through the county health agency, and what are called intensive case management services. And so those are the additional supportive services to help make sure folks can maintain that housing. Something else that you'll probably hear about over time if you're not already familiar with this initiative is Housing Central Command, which is a group that LAHSA leads, or a structure that LAHSA leads, that is modeled in an incident command structure, which leverages partnerships with other stakeholders and funders of permanent supportive housing to help make sure we're getting that valuable resource into the hands of people who need it most quickly as possible. A lot of the work that's happening to make sure that that speed happens looks at process, looks at barriers, and looks at eliminating those barriers to make sure that we can help make that connection. Towards that end, LAHSA continues its efforts to develop a comprehensive inventory of all permanent supportive housing across the county. We're working on data sharing protocols with the housing authorities, with county health partners, and working on a universal housing application to make sure that the process to access housing is easier.
Thank you for your presentation. So we now turn to street engagement. Victor, Libby, LAHSA, and Housing for Health, respectively. Proceed, please.
Thank you, Chair Ridley Thomas and council members. Victor Hinderleiter, I'm the Interim Director for LAHSA's Access and Engagement Department, and I'm looking forward to spending a little bit of time talking about our unsheltered strategies within our homelessness response system. I think the two main things that I want to touch upon today are coordination and partnership. With over 500 outreach workers engaging people experiencing homelessness across the city and the county, partnership and coordination really are key. We conduct that coordination at various levels. County-wide, the Outreach Coordination Leadership Team meets on a daily basis to troubleshoot any big picture coordination issues and look at incoming resources and strategies. On a SPA level, outreach coordinators act as air traffic controllers for all of the different outreach teams that are working on the ground. And then at even smaller hub or special project levels, we do care coordination around specific individuals, specific resources that are available or coming online for outreach workers. Our outreach teams are divided into several different types. LAHSA's homeless engagement teams are generalist outreach teams that really are able to provide referrals into any type of service or resource that an unsheltered person may need. The multidisciplinary teams funded through the Department of Health Services and deployed by our community partner agencies have specialists within that 5-person team to address medical needs, mental health needs, substance use needs, and they also include a peer specialist, somebody who has that lived experience. And then we also have a number of specialty outreach teams, such as our DMH home teams that really target those who are gravely disabled or gravely disabled adjacent. We also have teams that work on special projects, such as our CARE or our CARE Plus teams, or our host or host regional teams in the county. If we could go to the next slide, what that looks like on a SPA-wide service planning area specific basis is all new outreach requests get funneled through our LA Homeless Outreach portal. Anybody in the community, anybody experiencing homelessness, anybody in an elected office can request outreach at www.la-hop.org. Those requests go to the local outreach coordinator who maintains the inventory of all of the different outreach workers and outreach teams within their geography. So they know which team is best suited to respond to those individual requests, or if a specific team is already working with an individual or within an encampment where that request was made. Those outreach coordinators also facilitate those regional care coordination meetings. And so they assign those LA HOP requests to the specific generalist, multidisciplinary, or specialist team as appropriate. And if we could go to the next slide, I just wanted to touch a little bit on the outreach activities, the focus of the outreach teams. And we found it's really important for a number of reasons, many of which the council members stated at the beginning of this meeting, that all of our outreach teams really have a strong housing focus in all of the activities that we're conducting, but also have a strong public health and safety focus. So through the coordination of services, we're providing connections to short and long-term housing options. We're providing connections to immediate needs such as mental health needs and medical needs and substance use needs, connecting folks to mainstream benefits or supporting their employment search, augmenting their income in other ways, completing comprehensive standardized needs assessments so that we can have a better understanding of what folks are eligible for and what services they really do need to be connected to, helping folks with housing navigation, assistance obtaining documents that they need for their housing, including birth certificates, social security cards, IDs, verifications of income, verifications of homeless status, and other needs. Concurrently, we're also looking at public health and safety of people who are unsheltered. Right now, we have a very strong focus on the COVID pandemic and conducting regular wellness assessments. Libby, Ms. Boyce will be talking about the COVID response teams and the amazing work that they have been doing to help protect the safety of our unsheltered neighbors during this time. And we also respond in a coordinated fashion during times of crises, such as inclement weather, which we're expecting this evening, when wildfires break out, or other types of crises.
We thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. My name is Libby Boyce. I work for Housing for Health under LA County's Department of Health Services. I oversee our street-based engagement, our interim housing, and enriched residential care for folks who need boarding care to be permanently housed. I've been asked to speak a little bit about the multidisciplinary teams that Victor just spoke about as part of the coordinated outreach system, and I'll give you a very quick snippet of what we're doing on the COVID front as well. This is just a visual. I think pictures speak a million words. This is visual of the planning that went on many years ago and continues to go on about how we divvy up our outreach resources throughout LA County and ensure that we have hubs that there's a lot of communication between all of the outreach going on within those hubs. Next slide, please. Our multidisciplinary teams include professionals with the health, mental health, substance use, and case management, as well as people with lived experience. We do use the philosophy of whatever it takes, bringing people inside, getting them connected to resources. These are just some of the many, many pictures that we've been able to take of our teams at work. Next slide, please. In terms of our COVID response, which is sort of our immediate emergency and something that we have been working on since March and will continue to work on until we have to, as long as we have to. We have 18 unsheltered COVID response teams. They are specifically doing wellness checks, testing, and working on outbreaks. This includes RNs, EMTs, case managers, and program managers. Through January 20th, 2021, we've tested over 17,000 unsheltered people experiencing homelessness. We have continued with our wellness checks. We are doing COVID infection control education for over 2,000 encampments. And our COVID infection rate has been a 2.2%. Which is actually very good compared to the general population. We still have a lot of work to do, however. CRTs include an RN, EMT, as I mentioned, overseen by an MD and a program director. We are using our structure that we've created for our outreach to shift to vaccinations for our unsheltered neighbors. Next slide, please. We have also, I wanted to just touch on this so everyone knows, we have also implemented and are managing quarantine and isolation sites for people experiencing homelessness. We currently have 8 sites. They are in the Valley in Long Beach, Pomona, South LA, and Mid-City Skid Row. And we have 811 beds that are available now for quarantine and isolation for people experiencing homelessness. Our beds are accessed through the DPH call line, and our COVID response team teams are working with the Department of Public Health to coordinate all of the transfers to those quarantine and isolation beds for unsheltered people experiencing homelessness. Next slide.
Marina Genchev again. I'll share just briefly about some of the additional supportive services that are also available, either at loss of funds or in the context of the Homeless Service Network. You've heard a lot about outreach, so I will skip that and share about a couple other resources, such as housing navigation, which is, while similar to outreach, is a little bit more housing focused and does that end-to-end work of helping connect people from street or shelter all the way to housing. Various centers that we fund, such as access centers, drop-in sites for youth, and family solution centers for the family system, which are locations that folks can connect to services, referrals, and linkages to other resources such as interim housing. We fund legal services to help with any barriers that may be involved that would prevent return to housing location services through a sizable contract with PATH, People Assisting the Homeless, who helps to identify and hold units on the mainstream housing market to help people get back into housing once they are able to. And then employment services as a partnership that we do with a lot of other mainstream employment services, but also launching some new pilots just this month to continue that work to connect people to employment services as needed. Next slide, please. It's also worth noting that in the context of coordinated entry, we do work with a lot of other partners to help ensure that mainstream resources are accessible and connected regardless of where people connect to homeless services, be it outreach, interim housing, a bricks and mortar site like access sites. So you can see from today's presentation, there's obviously a lot of collaboration with our county partners, but this could look like referring individuals to services and resources available through a health clinic or a mental health clinic, working connect somebody to a substance abuse bed with SAPC, working to make sure that as individuals or youth are exiting either DCFS or probation, that they're able to get connected to homeless services, and making sure that homeless services are known and understood to those departments in those offices. You've also heard reference to coordinated entry and outreach coordination from the last few speakers, but a lot of the work to coordinate all of these resources that you're hearing about today is done by agencies funded to be system leads or coordinated entry leads that try to make sure that this landscape of resources is something that not only homeless service workers can navigate, but most importantly, that they can help individuals experiencing homelessness navigate without too much difficulty. Lastly, I'll just note that we continue to do a lot of work to make sure that other systems of services are able to connect to homeless resources. So for example, if a household is fleeing domestic violence or human trafficking, that if they are encountered by the homeless service system and want to connect to DV resources, or if DV resources need to connect to homeless services, vice versa, that we have those connection points. That same example holds for veterans, for seniors, for those exiting the justice system, that we continue to do a lot of work to make sure that we're able to essentially cross between those systems and make sure that if a veteran shows up in homeless services, they can connect to services at the VA, for example. So I will, I think, pass it off to our last presenter for our last slide with that.
All right, Phil.
Good afternoon. So there's a range of dimensions of the collaboration between the city and the county, which is fundamental to the countywide movement to prevent and combat homelessness. In this slide, Meg Barkley and I will talk about sort of 4 of the aspects of the relationship. One of the critical connections between Measure H and Proposition Triple H is the commitment by the county to fund intensive case management and related services for up to 10,000 city-funded units of new permanent supportive housing, which, as Ann mentioned, is primarily but not exclusively funded through Triple H. And we've memorialized that commitment in a memorandum of understanding between the city, HACLA, and the county, where the city is committed to the capital funding, HACLA is committed to the rental subsidies through HUD Section 8 vouchers, and the county is committed to provide the services through Measure H. Turn it over to Meg on the next item.
Thanks, Phil. So I kind of already referred to this further in the previous slide about interim housing, but it does also speak to city-county collaboration. It's the Alliance MOU between the that's resulting in the city's COVID-19 homelessness roadmap. As I previously stated, the county will support 50% of services up to $3 million over 5 years through June 30th, 2025. The agreement was finalized in July of 2020, or June of 2020, excuse me. And the city would pay any capital costs to establish these 6,700 interventions to be completed by December 16th, 2021, and fund 50% of the services costs, up to $300 million over 5 years.
All right.
Sorry, go ahead, Phil.
Meg, were you going to speak to the COVID response? Or?
Hang on, there's been several different ways. I mean, aside from sort of ongoing communication and coordination relative more broadly to the COVID response as it relates to people experiencing homelessness, Project Room Key is one of the a very coordinated city-county effort to, especially during the process of establishing Project Room Key sites and overall policy and setting policy across all of them to ensure consistency. There's been regular coordination around this program, and even discussing with the recent announcement of 100% FEMA reimbursement. We are in the process of confirming what that means for Project Room Key and making sure that we all have consistent information about the applicability of that reimbursement to non-congregate shelter programs like Room Key.
And then finally, with respect to state policy advocacy, the city and the county are at the heart of a coordinated effort across Los Angeles County to advocate with the state government for additional resources and policy changes. We came together in the fall of 2019 to develop a comprehensive proposal for new ongoing state funding that would be dedicated to local government to prevent and combat homelessness. We issued that proposal calling for $2 billion a year in new state funding, ongoing state funding. The governor, in his State of the State address in February 2020, embraced the concept of ongoing funding to local government. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. So earlier this year, the city and the county were founding members of the Bring California Home Coalition, which is sponsoring AB 71 by Assemblymember Luz Rivas, which would increase the corporate tax rate and for large corporations and conform to one of the changes in the federal tax bill to generate additional tax revenue from multinational corporations that they earn through intellectual property. And together, those two funding sources are projected to generate $2.4 billion in annual ongoing funding. This is fundamental to our effort to combat homelessness in Los Angeles County and Los Angeles City, and aligns with the updated systems analysis in February 2020, which LAHSA released in collaboration with the city and the county, that identified an ongoing need for $500 million annually across the county for rental subsidies and services to have an optimally functioning homeless services system that's independent of any capital costs. And in fact, it's telling that on March 13th, the last day of business travel, Meg and I and Heidi Marston were in the office of the State Director of Finance, meeting with her and the governor's lead on homelessness, presenting the system analysis and linking it to our proposal for ongoing annual state funding. So our collaboration between the city and the county is nowhere more important than in Sacramento, where the fact that we do have such a strong collaboration has a very powerful impact within the Capitol. So much so that Jason Elliott in that March meeting said to us, we're trying to figure out how to use our levers to get other cities and counties elsewhere in the state to collaborate as effectively as you do in Los Angeles.
All right. We thank you for your comments that collectively constitutes what I think can be described as a baseline or a point of departure, members of the committee. The hour strikes 12:30. That puts us at approximately 2.5 hours of committee work and deliberation. It's my suggestion that we continue the balance of what's before us to our next regularly scheduled meeting at 10 a.m. on February the 11th. If there are questions that members of the committee may wish to pose to our presenters, our illustrious presenters, then I would say for the record, let's just verbalize them without an expectation for a response unless there is a desire for us to bring in dinner rather than lunch. Therefore, I would just hope that the members of the committee, should you have a question to pose, do so now. Our presenters can prepare responses to those questions as we return on the 11th of February. I trust that that's satisfactory for the committee's consideration. Chair will entertain questions to be posed to the panel by any member of the committee. I begin with Mr. De Leon. I proceed from there to Ms. Rahman, followed by Ms. Rodriguez, and finally Mr. Buscaino. A question or two that you wish for them to come back and respond. Mr. De Leon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for organizing this all-star cast of government officials at all the various levels who deal with the issue of homelessness. And you're right. You know, we can go on clearly past dinner time with the questions and answers. So I'll just throw out this question, and we'll get it next, either offline, the answer, or like you said, the next committee hearing. One of the ones, which is this particular for HSID, that sort of stayed with me, was if we didn't leverage dollars, then we would be building roughly about 3,000 units, you know, in particular. So the only other question I have is, what price point makes sense to build permanent housing? What's the price point that makes sense given the limited resources that we currently have? And, you know, can we be more innovative and creative, you know, with land costs, with soft costs, or do we just adhere to the same old, you know, paradigm that has really, you know, driven a lot of exorbitant cost? So what's that price point that's acceptable right there?
Thank you, Mr. De Leon.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Rahman, your question, should you have one.
One question I had after watching the presentation, which was great. Thank you guys for putting that together. Huge amount of work being done across all of these different entities, and clearly a lot of collaboration as well. My question was about kind of addiction and the response to addiction. Where is the, you know, where are the dollars coming from for, sorry, I'm going to mute.
No, you're good.
Oh, here we go. Okay. Yeah, where are the dollars coming from for support for, you know, substance abuse issues and rehab beds, and where are the connections with counselors and other providers of services that can help people struggling with substance abuse issues, and how institutionally, where are those connections falling right now? Oh, and the only other question I had was in terms of communication to council districts. As you know, council districts are like a lot of the issues that we're getting calls about are related to encampments and kind of the preferred lines of communication between this big entity and council districts, and the way that we can organize in a way to make sure that we're capturing information, sharing it out as appropriate, and acting on it appropriately. Where do we fit in that whole system? You know.
Thank you for both questions, Council Member Rahman. Council Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for a really great. I mean, you reflected exactly how complicated, how connected everyone is to doing a piece of the work, and that's the challenge that remains before us. That said, I also know that we've had discussions over reporting the immediate availability of beds for rehousing and what the status of that, either an application or making sure that we're holding those contracted to provide those available beds for immediate shelter, what the status is, so that we can better align individuals with available room nights in everyone's respective areas. And, you know, there's a whole host of other conversations that I know we had actually engaged in prior to this New Year's committee. So I'm gonna reserve many of those for individual engagements, and colleagues will share them at upcoming meetings. But thank you, Mr. Chair. That's an important one that I know immediately seeing the progress of that application is something that will benefit us all.
We thank you, Council Member. And finally, Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you very much. On my line, what I would like to see forward is the importance of, you know, information is power, and being able to share information on a timely basis, real-time basis with the public, particularly among the Housing Central Command. How can we see that? Is it available for people to view it as projects are coming online? What's being built already? Education on this crisis is something that we need to share with folks throughout the county. And secondly, how are we leveraging, going back to my earlier comments when we opened the committee, to working alongside the private sector? Urban Awnings has been thirsting for space and real estate, and apparently they keep coming up against roadblocks with BOE, and Urban Awnings is an incredible project working alongside the Carpenters Union in the private sector and the public sector. Case in point, I have a specific site on government site at our local community college.
Mr. Buscaino, may the chair just simply ask that you pose the question?
Yeah. So So that is how do we leverage these private investments so we can move quickly on building out housing at all levels?
Members of the committee, it is the chair's commitment to begin our next meeting with the questions that you have posed. Panelists, my request will be that you be prepared to answer those questions. The chair's question is the following: what is the overarching organizing principle for the work we are seeking to do? In other words, what does alignment look like? How do we get to the notion of scale and ultimately collaboration between the two principal entities that have to work together, namely the city and the county? If you were to look at the presentation that was made today, what do you extract from it in terms of the overarching organizing principle that ties all of this work together? Or stated differently, is there one? And if there isn't, what shall we do about that? Madam Clerk, that concludes the business of the day. When we reconvene, we will begin with the questions that the committee has posed. We thank the presenters for the work that they have done. We expect that they will return with more work for us to consider. That will constitute Part A in terms of the comprehensive crisis Response strategy for the city. Part B is to dive into the discussion pertaining to a right to housing. Members of the committee, are there any other items that you wish to bring to our collective attention at this point? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, I think the file is then cleared, and we are now adjourned. I thank you for your attention.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.